Final game of the first round from the big three. Caruana, Nakamura and Wesley So. And we're going to look at the game by Wesley So. He had the black pieces against Yaroslav Zerebukh. I believe Zerebukh is originally Ukrainian, but he has probably been living in the States for a while now, so he qualifies to play for the US Chess Championship. And just like well, in all the games so far, we see e4, and we see Wesley going for c5, the Sicilian. So like I mentioned in the Caruana video, probably we're going to see some sharper openings by the big three, trying to rack up the wins. So far, none of them has managed to win in the first round, but let's see how Wesley So does. Bishop to b5 check. The Moscow, right? Somehow the name all of a sudden escaped me. Anywho, here black has some choices: bishop d7, knight c6, or what So went for, knight to d7. Here a quite unusual move. d4 is the most common move. Castles has been played quite often, but Zerebukh played bishop to a4. This seems to be an awfully rare move, and it looks like it must have been some kind of preparation, because here he castled and did so quite quickly. And so naturally So played here a6. Didn't think for too long, like 3 minutes I think. But it's quite interesting. If the natural question is what happens if black takes on e4. I mean, there do exist some lines where this is very dangerous. There are some queen a4 checks, some d4. Here it looks like rook e1 is quite dangerous, knight f6 and not d4. And I'm sure that Zerebukh had some preparation here. I went a little deeper just to see, you know, what's going on. If black develops quite normally, let's say e6, bishop e7, he wants to castle, and you know, ask white, you know, I do have this extra pawn. There's no pawn on e4, but that also means that the e file is open. And remarkably, the computer says rook takes e6 is fine for white here, actually more than fine. And after this, this is very dangerous for black, and white is actually close to winning in some lines. For instance, queen b6 is very dangerous. After bishop f4, it's just very hard to find the move for black, and the computer is giving this almost a +3, even though white is down a rook for a pawn. So I'm sure that Zerebukh had some deep preparation there. But So didn't go for any of this. He just played a6. He wants to play b5, get a normal game. But now c4, preventing b5. And again, if takes, we probably get similar lines, rook to e1, followed by d4, and some initiative for white for the pawn. So didn't fancy that, so he just played g6, knight c3, bishop g7. So when first playing through this, I thought, it looks like a normal position, but the bishop here makes a strange impression, especially if you play d4 and get some kind of Maroczy position. You want the bishop on e2 probably. But let's see. So he doesn't go for d4, he plays d3, castles, and now h3 by Zerebukh, b6, very solid play from Wesley. He just wants the bishop on b7, double fianchetto, bishop g5 from white. Black pushes this, but okay, Zerebukh figures that he gets a tempo here because black has to play king h7. But on the other hand, this isn't usually such a big problem for black, this king position. Now b4, trying to expand on the queen side. And So just play solidly here, rook a to c8, rook f to c1 by white, e6. So sort of a hedgehog position, except that we haven't really traded this pawn for this pawn, which is usual for hedgehogs. So is just waiting patiently and solidly for white to reveal his hand. And now we see knight to e2, maneuvers the knight over to the king side, although it's not all that clear what's going on there, but white must have some future ideas, like transferring the knight maybe to g4, play f4, f5, you know, something. Bishop a8. Okay, this is a typical, like, you know, creeping move. Now the bishop isn't in the line of fire on the b file, and now it's protected. And in some cases, maybe you want to have the possibility of lining up on the diagonal. So just a small probing move that improves the position. Maybe more prophylactic than probing. We aren't really threatening anything. Knight to b8 now. So he wants to bring this knight to c6, where he feels like it has more influence over the d4 square. Some ideas of maybe pushing d5. It's a very dynamic position. Knight to h2. It seems like white is looking for something to happen on the king side. Eventually, the knight reroutes to c6 and now f4. So white is trying to start active operations on the king side. And yeah, with that in mind, rook f1 is consistent. It seems like he wants to play something like this. But on the other hand, it frees black up from this file. The rook goes on c1, eyeing up the queen. So now black can actually take advantage of this, and here the game starts to turn around a little bit, and So starts to seek his own chances, and he plays b5. And this starts to put white on the back foot a little bit. I think so far the position has been, you know, just dynamically balanced, with both sides having chances. But now So is taking over. A takes b5, the bishop has to go to d1, disconnecting the rooks, which usually can be a problem, and turns out to be at the queen to a7. This is attacked, and now the rook on a1 is actually unprotected. Now in the game, Nakamura So took on b4, and now you can't take with the pawn which you would like, and Zerebukh had to take with the queen. There did, however, exist a very juicy tactic here, which Wesley So missed. Now, can you find, yeah, more or less the winning move for black here? Yeah, this is pretty hard to see. I mean, this is something, if you got this as a tactical puzzle, you would probably find it. But in a real game, it's really hard. I mean, you have the current US champion, top 10 player in the world, and he didn't find this. So here, black had the shot knight to f5. And this is just amazing. What's going on? Well, I think the key line is e takes f5, which is, well, okay. The piece is hanging, but then comes the calm knight to d5. This attacks the rook, but more importantly, it attacks the bishop. So if you move the rook, let's say rook to a2 or rook b1, let's say, oh, doesn't really matter. Now we can take this, and the main problem is you can't take back because of bishop d4, which would win the queen. So a very nice move, but also very complicated. There's also knight takes f5. And yeah, this is just really hard to see in a real game, but a nice move nonetheless, which we always like to see. But Wesley took on b4, and he got a nice position because of this situation here with the rook. Now knight to d7, protecting this and also threatening discoveries. And therefore white played king to h1. But now a nice tactic by Wesley So. He plays knight to c2, which looked impossible, but this forces white's hand. I mean, it's a double attack on the queen and the bishop, so you have to take on a7. More or less. I mean, you can take on c2, but queen takes e3, and yeah. Black has the bishop pair. This is hanging. This is hanging. Weaknesses all around. So it looks like bishop takes a7 is a critical move. But on the other hand, after this fourth sequence here, now the rook is attacked. So rook b1, knight takes d3. So white doesn't want a pawn, but there's rook takes b5. But So had seen further. He played bishop to c6. And now rook a8. And once the bishop moves, the pawn on a3 is going to be gobbled. So pawn up for Wesley So, and very active position. And he managed to sail this home. h5. Can be useful to push h4 in some lines. Knight to e2. Knight c5. Knight took on c5. Pressure here. White is getting really passive. Bishop to a4. Takes on d6. So 4 against 3. So maybe some problems to convert, but black has the bishop pair as well. And like I said, very active pieces. Meanwhile, white has very passive pieces. Potential problems with the king and the weak pawns. So let's see. Knight comes into b3. Knight d2. Rook e1. And now rook d7 because this was under attack. And So doesn't mind the trade. Then after rook d1, rook to a2. And finally, some further exchanges coming up here. And this is really hard for white to defend. He played knight f3, bishop to b5, knight f2 e1. Really passive position for white, h4. Fixing this as a weakness, and yeah, it's just a matter of technique now. Bishop to c3. And the white pieces, they're not threatening anything, they're just defending. And here, bishop takes d3 and takes on f4. And now, So is up 2 pawns. And after king g7, perhaps, you know, at some levels this would be a premature resignation, but there's nothing that white can do here. For a player like Wesley So, this is quite easy. There's no counterplay for white, he will simply push the pawns. This is coming, king f6, e5, e4, etc. And black will win. So a nice win for So. So he takes the lead out of the big three with a nice first round win with the black pieces against a strong opponent. So he can be quite happy. So, you know, the what do we say? The first blood comes to Wesley So, who's now leading, and I'm looking forward to more exciting chess from this tournament. And I will see you in the next video. Bye bye.